Diverse in method, imbued with style, and boasting a flair for the theatrics, the kills of the Halloween franchise offer something for everyone, no matter what your taste for death is. So to honor the franchise on the day that Halloween Kills would have been released, here are 20 of my favorite Halloween kills. Happy Halloween, Scream Team! Zach Cherry here. Guys, I started this channel because I'm a huge horror geek, and if you're like me, you might want to consider hitting that subscribe button and turning on those bell notifications so you can stay up to date with all my latest videos. Just a quick caveat, while this would normally be a list I would rank, I find with a category of this nature, any numerical placement would just become way too arbitrary, as I love all these kills. Also, some of y'all take this shit way too seriously, and quite frankly, it's exhausting. These videos are just for fun. With that in mind, I'm going to be listing each kill in alphabetical order of the victim's name. That way, we don't have to split hairs over such trivial nonsense. So just for shits and gigs, toss this video a thumbs up, and if you feel I missed any noteworthy kills or just want to give me your own personal list, why don't you go ahead and meet me in the comments down below. For this list, I wanted to make sure every film in the franchise got proper representation. Unfortunately for the Rob Zombie camp, I am not a huge fan of those entries. Personally, I find the kills in them to be distasteful, sexually gratuitous, and lacking poetry. That's not to say I think you're wrong for enjoying them, they're just not my cup of tea. But just because they don't make my list proper doesn't mean I can't throw them a bone, so here are two honorable mentions. First up is Big Joe Grizzly in Halloween 2007. There's something novel about two behemoths wrestling in a grimy truck stop restroom. Plus, this was a fun cameo by Ken Foree, so I can at least take away some enjoyment from his presence in this movie. Also, Annie Brackett and Rob Zombie's sequel. It's not necessarily the kill itself that's outstanding, as this was done pretty tastefully off screen, but I just felt really bad for this character, and I would be remiss to not point out the incredible performances by both Danielle Harris and Brad Dourif. I don't think any other kill in this franchise carried the same emotional weight as this one did. But with the honorable also comes the dishonorable, and as I said, I did want to make sure every film in the franchise got proper representation. However, this is where Halloween Resurrection is going to get lumped in. I think we can all agree that Laurie's demise here was the absolute worst kill in any of these movies, mostly just for how they took the piss right out of her character. But then you also have Nora's death, which is entirely off screen and only established to us in a quick shot we see through grainy headcam footage. I feel if you're going to cast Tyra Banks in a Halloween movie, you best be giving her a good kill. What's even more curious is that this scene was filmed, but for whatever reason it wasn't in the movie or even included as a bonus feature on any home media release. But honestly, we didn't miss out on much, as the scene is kind of awkward and tepid. If you really want to see it though, just search for it on YouTube, it's there. But now we can get into the good stuff here, because starting off this list at A, remember, we're going alphabetically, is the original Annie Brackett. Now, this kill isn't particularly flashy or gory, as we know John Carpenter used very little blood in the movie, but it's on my list because it's such a seminal moment in horror. This is for all intents and purposes the first time the killer in the backseat urban legend made it onto celluloid, despite the tale originating 10 years earlier. And while today it's been imitated hundreds of times, back in the day this was quite groundbreaking and understandably horrifying to witness. Also from the original Halloween is Bob Sims. I feel this has become one of Michael's signature kills, as it's the one we've seen him perform the most in some form or another. But it will never be done as good as it was here, with Dean Cundy's incredible lighting and the origins of the famous head tilt. However, it does require one to suspend a modicum of disbelief at how even the largest of kitchen knives could pin an adult male against a closet door like that. But who cares about physics anyway? Next up is Buddy Cupford Jr. Halloween 2018 has been praised for having the chutzpah to kill off a 12-year-old boy, but apparently most of you have never bothered to watch Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, and it shows, because if you had, you would know this is old hat for the franchise. In fact, there was no age discrimination back in 1982, when we saw firsthand what the Silver Shamrock masks really did to the children who donned them, transforming this bratty kid's cranium into a putrefied vermin nest. The imagery here is so sick and depraved, and for that reason alone, I absolutely love it. Also, for anyone butthurt that this isn't a Michael Myers kill, get over yourself. These are Halloween kills. Anything goes. When it came to Halloween 4's production, executive producer Mustafa Akkad wanted a bloodless sequel, and to instead focus more on the suspense. But after viewing the initial cut of the film and finding it to be too tame, he changed his tune and developed something of a bloodlust, and hence we were given some more graphic kills, two of which are on this list, with this kill in particular being Earl Ford, the ringleader of the redneck vigilantes. We get a bit of a twist on the escape scene from the original, with Michael straddling the roof of a car where he reaches his arm in, except this time rips a man's neck clean open with his bare hand. Even though I feel this is more of a Jason Voorhees type kill, as Michael in this movie does seem to have a lot more superhuman strength than previously shown, I don't actually mind it all that much. It served to show 1988 movie audiences that Michael was not only back, but just as relevant as his slasher contemporaries. Now this next one comes from our most recent outing with Halloween 2018, and that will be Officer Francis. There are a lot of off-screen kills in this movie, basically half of them. And normally I would take issue with that, but the presentation here is so avant-garde that I wish we had more reveals that were as fresh as this one. It does somewhat echo another kill, which I won't spoil just yet as it's also on this list, if you can guess which one I'm talking about, but you just gotta love Michael's whimsical side here. This shows us that he's not just a senseless killing machine, but is actually very curious and playful in his methods. These are the kind of kills that a lot of the other sequels lacked. That doesn't necessarily mean I want every kill in the franchise to have this level of pizzazz, but I really hope we see more creativity like this in Halloween kills. Next up, and also from Halloween 2018, is kind of a cheat as this is a twofer, but it's not so much the kills themselves as it is the entire body of the scene in which they occur. And I am of course referring to the long tracking shot where Michael makes his way through multiple houses, killing the characters who are given the names of Gina Pancella and Andrea Wagner. The actual kills aren't anything special, as one occurs completely out of frame and the other appears to be done with some noticeable CGI. Fortunately, they have improved their technology in the last 20 years, but I suppose it was necessary for the long shot as it all had to be done in one take. What I love about this sequence in particular is that it not only pays homage to John Carpenter's style and specifically the opening of Halloween 2, but also for how voyeuristic it feels. Normally, we experience these kills through the perspective of the victim, otherwise we see them through the POV shot of the killer, but this is the first time we actually get to be present with the shape as it casually stalks its way from door to door. It gives these kills a very unique quality that we haven't seen before. Going back to Halloween 4, we have Jay Black, which possibly stands for Jack Black, otherwise known as the male attendant. Similar to Earl's death, this kill was added in after principal filming had completed. From what I understand, the scene would have ended with Michael hearing about Jamie's existence and clenching his fist in anger, only to have the aftermath shown to us later on. So I'm happy they decided to spice this up a little, because I feel the excitement in this movie is few and far between, but the thumb in the forehead is a definite highlight, and one I almost didn't include on this list, if I'm being perfectly honest. But I do find it very inspired how John Carl Buechler used a mechanical arm with a retractable thumb in order to capture this effect. This next one, I don't hear a lot of people ever really talk about, unless they're airing their frustration with both the treatment and recasting of this character, so I feel the kill itself is often overlooked. But Jamie Lloyd's death in Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers is one that remains permanently burned into my memory, for this not only being the first movie I saw in the franchise, but also for how frightening and gruesome the entire scene is. I think a lot of that has to do with the incredibly underrated cinematography setting the mood here, but it's also such a mean-spirited kill for Michael, where he feigns remorse, I suppose, only to psych us out and thrust her down further onto the corn thresher, and then to turn it on? Ugh, it's so gross. But that was just the time period, I guess, as early 90s horror pushed the boundaries with its ultra-violent imagery, which by today's standards doesn't seem all that extreme. This next one on my list is also kind of a twofer, but really it's just one with the added bonus of revealing an off-screen kill in the process. And that's in Halloween 2, when Nurse Janet finds Dr. Mixter's body, only to have Michael materialize behind her and stick her temple with a hypodermic needle, inserting an air bubble. Ugh, I absolutely hate needles, and there's so much close-up shots of needles in this movie. It makes me queasy, especially when eyeballs are involved. I can handle most blood and gore, but needles freak me out, man. What elevates this kill for me is just how beautifully lit and framed this entire sequence is, especially with the reflective light dancing all over the room. And I am 100% here for any Psycho reference. Sticking with Halloween 2, we also have Nurse Jill. I think this might be one of the most iconic kills of the franchise, and ironically enough, I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I do like how there's a pregnant pause before we hear John Carpenter's ubiquitous stinging sound effect, and the fact that her shoes fall off is a nice added touch. We saw this replicated in H2O to less fanfare, but this is still one of those kills that usually finds its way onto these lists, so I felt I had to include it. One kill that might be celebrated just a little bit more than anyone else's in the franchise is, of course, John Strode's from Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, as he might be one of the most hated characters. Again, this is one of those kills you you expect to see on these lists, and for good reason. Despite this being completely silly and far removed from Michael's typical MO, it's such a deliciously gory demise with just the right amount of satire that I do really appreciate it, especially with all the frothing at the mouth. This does feel like it's treading into Jason territory still, and obviously this head explosion is physically impossible, but considering that the original death scene in the producer's cut was a little limp in comparison, I think that they can justify its inclusion. But moving on, there isn't a shadow of a doubt that this next one is among a lot of people's favorites, and just happens to be the one I have the most to say about. And we are talking about none other than Nurse Karen Bailey, who is drowned / scalded in the hydrotherapy tub in Halloween 2. This kill works for me on multiple levels. First off, it's frightening as fuck. Whether it's the drowning or the being boiled alive, both of those methods are just extremely unpleasant, so a combination of the two really heightens the visceral response that I get from it. And then to see the skin peeling off the face afterwards only intensifies that feeling. I also love this for the fact that it's a direct homage to Dario Argento's Deep Red from 1975, which if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend, as well as most of his filmography from the 70s and 80s. The third reason why I love this kill is because we get one of those lead-ups where Michael is playing a trick on his victim, in this case pretending to be someone he's not, very similar to Ghost Bob from the original and also seen in a few subsequent sequels. And it kind of harkens back to the theme of sex and death and displays an innate fascination that Michael has for it as he puts himself in this role-playing situation and allows her to nibble on his fingers just to see how far he can go with it. Cult storylines with impregnated nieces notwithstanding, these are the moments where he's able to get close enough to grasp the concept of sex, but rather than partaking in the physical act itself, his version of that instead turns to murder. It's a very interesting character trait, which I hope they explore more of in the remainder of this new trilogy. Jumping back to Season of the Witch, we have Marge Gutman, with probably the strangest kill on this list, but also one of the fucking best. But if you want to be uncultured and hate on this movie because reasons, go take that up with John Carpenter. But because this movie isn't tied down by Michael Myers, it's able to go completely off the rails with its kills. And this is some sick shit and some of the best practical effects of this entire franchise. This is basically a Hellraiser and Evil Dead sandwich, with a healthy dose of creepy crawly in the mix too. Seriously, that shit's just nasty. Another kill from The Curse of Michael Myers, which isn't breaking any new ground, but is still plenty impactful, is Nurse Mary's, giving us an updated version of Bob's death, this time by just smashing her head into a random spike on the wall at Smith's Grove Sanitarium. I'm sure that thing isn't up to hospital code, but it does the trick, and I love how long she twitches for afterwards as the camera zooms out. This is also the first time I got to see Michael kill somebody, so it holds a special place in my heart. Back to 2018, we've got Oscar on the Elrod Gate. I'm always confused whether he gets impaled by accident, or if it was Michael who forced his chin down onto that spike, but I think we can all agree on at least one thing.
No kicks!
What makes this kill so spectacular to me is, again, its presentation. Yes, partly the motion detector lights, but especially that kick-ass John Carpenter score that accompanies the reveal. That is my absolute favorite track from the movie, and you best believe I listen to that full album every day. Also from 2018 is Dr. Sartain. Yes, this was recycled from Rob Zombie's H2, but I find it's just done way more dynamically here, especially with the dramatic camera angles and saturated color palette, which evokes memories of Halloween 2, but you know, the good one. Yeah, it's nasty to look at, but at least the intent here isn't as sensational. With its one and only placement on this list, Halloween 5 will be represented by Sammy, who gets bisected with a scythe. This kill definitely could have been a lot better, as I do feel they hold back just a little bit by not really showing all that much, but what makes this kill special to me is Michael's alternative choice for weaponry. As a matter of fact, I think this movie is the most diverse he's been when it comes to selecting deadly implements. And even though that's more so Jason's forte, I can appreciate the variety here. Michael doesn't always have to be so fixed in his traditionalist ways. I don't think he needs to go overboard, but I find the most memorable kills come from thinking outside of the box. Another sequel which has only one entry on this list is Halloween H2O. This is the one I mentioned earlier that I said was sort of echoed with the police officer in Halloween 2018. So if you had guessed Sarah, then you would be absolutely correct, as this is of course in a very similar vein with hollowing out someone's insides in order to make a decorative light ornament. But this particular kill has a very compound nature to it, as it works in two stages. First, we have the dumbwaiter sequence, which is a very white-knuckled moment in this movie, and one that provides us with some pretty gory visuals before it even arrives at its crescendo, which we get to see later on when her body is discovered. And considering how basic basic this movie is in terms of its kills and low body count, this is quite an elaborate set piece, because not only do we get to see a partially amputated leg, but also Michael Myers' spin on the Casey Becker kill from Scream. We've still got 2 more to go, and I'm just gonna take us back to Halloween 3 one more time with the character of Starker. Again, this movie employs incredible practical effects, and we see that firsthand when one of Cochrane's humanoid henchmen, played by Dick Warlock of all people, tears a man's head clean off. It's a simple yet effective kill, and considering some of the subsequent decapitations we see throughout the franchise, this one actually does it the best. But that will bring us to the last entry alphabetically with the character who is only known as Teller from Halloween 2018. It's another off-screen kill, and fittingly so, as I feel it's almost as if what we don't see makes it scarier, and while the effect itself is pretty gruesome, especially when we find out what happened to all of his teeth, I think it's the overall direction of the entire scene which really sells this for me. The attention to background detail that David Gordon Green delivers here leading up to the reveal and then continuing on afterwards does make for one of the more memorable scenes from the film, with this poor soul's ripped open jaw being the centerpiece to that. Just want to say a huge thanks to my Patreon supporter Steve Jarula. If you've enjoyed what you watched today and are interested in supporting the channel, you can head over there to access exclusive bonus content. Otherwise, I'll be back next week to give you my ranking of the best and worst characters of the Halloween franchise. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Zach Cherry, and I'll be right back.